Jim, a little more audio here regarding Tony Khan, and then we're going to get out of here. We ran a little long today. This is apparently something being released as we are recording. A ton of listeners have already sent it over. It's from an interview with Chris Van Vliet. Jake Hager appeared on his show.
Oh, good Lord.
Let's review some audio here. We'll break it up a few times. We have not heard a peep from Jake Hager, maybe ever. So let's hear what he has to say.
So when did you stop loving what you were doing there, or just loving wrestling in general?
It was right after we did the Vegas. Was that the Stadium Stampede? No, it was like the second Blood and Guts. The second Blood and Guts we did in Vegas, and it was against Daniel Bryan and Cesaro and those guys. And then Sammy jumped off the cage. My first contract with AEW was up, and after that, we were like the negotiation process was very one way, and I could tell that. Well, anyways, I always find a way to say this every day, so I think everyone should too. Say "fuck Tony Khan." I could tell that he didn't want me there. He offered me like a year and a half.
Let me stop it there for a second. Again, there's a lot more here for a few minutes. We were not necessarily proponents of Jake Hager. We didn't really see whether it's the way he was used or just what he brought to the table.
It was both. It was both. Yeah.
But here he is saying that he was negotiating, and it wasn't, we won't bring you back, but as he said, it was a one-sided thing. We'll give you this, accept this or nothing. Is AEW wrong in any of that in your eyes so far?
What with Jake Hager, here's the thing. What did he ever do? What did he ever contribute? What great Jake Hager promo was there ever given that people talk about? What great match did he have? What memorable angle was he in? He was a friend of somebody that they got Jericho. They got Tony to sign Jericho. Okay, he got Tony to sign him from the start, and he'd been there at that point for a couple years and had done little of anything. And with the product that I was seeing on screen, Jake Hager should have been happy that a billionaire wanted to offer him a contract for 18 months. Because I would have said, okay, we'll see you later because I'm wasting money. There's nothing here. So that Tony offered him anything, I'm on Tony's side on that. Because my response would have been, why the fuck are you on this roster? But that's just me.
And remember, we said at the very beginning when everything was lovey-dovey, and he was there. He debuted on the first Dynamite, if you remember. One day the stories are going to start coming out. One day these guys are not going to respect and love Tony Khan as much as they do right now, here at the beginning. And I think we're starting to see that. Let's go back to Jake Hager's talk with Chris Van Vliet.
Like, bro, I just did Stadium Stampede twice. Like, don't act like Stadium Stampede didn't put AEW on the map. I was in the debut episode. I was the big spoiler, and you offer me 18 months after all that. So it was that and the way that he started running the business that it really, like, he wasn't a professional. Like,
let me stop it there for a second. 18-month contract. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, again, why would you sign the guy at all, to be honest, with what he was doing? And even if he could do more, but they hadn't booked him to do more, well, that's the fault of the guy that Tony just said he was writing the shows. So I'll give you an 18-month contract for whatever he was overpaying Hager to do, which was nothing. Again, I don't have any sympathy for this guy. Now, both of these things can be true. Hager can be useless and Tony can be unprofessional. It's a cluster. It's inexperienced people who aren't particularly good at what they're trying to do, coming together to try to work together.
Here's some more audio from Jake Hager's conversation with Chris Van Vliet.
We, like, after all the Punk shit that went down, the boys got together and we had a meeting, and this was the boys only, no office. All right. And we're all like Sting's in there, Show, Jericho, Bryan, Mox, they're all standing at the front, kind of like talking us through this shit. And lo and behold, who comes into the room storming in? Daddy's little billionaire. And he's like yelling at us because I think it was Dax and Cash and Wheeler didn't want to come in.
Cash and Wheeler
storyline, so they refused to come to TV that day. And he was like, "Listen, I'll put you in a 6-man 6 minutes before the show, and you're gonna do it." And we're all just like, all feeling disrespected. And I still to this day wish I would have stood up and said,
Oh, let me stop this for a second.
Hold on.
There's a whole
Yeah,
lot here. Yeah.
Degenerating into gibberish. I'm not aware, and it would have been news, and it would have been reported. Did Cash and Dax, or Cash and Wheeler, as he said, did they ever no-show a TV taping? That's number one. Have we ever heard of Tony rushing in anywhere and screaming at people, since he never seems to want to yell at people before? But what does it mean? I'll put you all in a 6-man tag for 6 minutes. What? I don't even understand what this guy is.
Before we even get there, in terms of a wrestlers only meeting, a locker room meeting, no office, how often does that happen? And what would happen if all of a sudden the boss just stormed in and started yelling at everyone about something kind of off topic from what you guys are talking about? If this was after the Punk thing, and after there's a big fight amongst executives in the locker room and CM Punk, and this is kind of like, all right, team, we got to do what we can in this weird Dirty Dozen kind of fucking team they got going on over there. But if that's what this is, and all of a sudden Tony storms in and goes, "I'll book you however I fucking want to book you." What does that do?
Well, it wasn't a talent-only meeting anyway, because didn't he say Danielson was there, and Danielson was on the disciplinary committee?
Not yet. That was before there was a disciplinary committee.
Oh, I forgot. That's right. Well, it was all the guys whispering to Tony, conducting a meeting to try to settle all the guys down or whatever. There was still, Tony was going to hear everything that happened in the meeting, obviously. And Hager doesn't sound to me, I'm sorry, but I don't honestly believe him, because he sounded like he was hemming and hawing and trying to figure out where he was going next. If he's predicating this thing on, "You need to believe me because I was such a valuable commodity," I think he's full of shit to begin with.
Well, let's hear more about his thoughts when Tony Khan stormed into the meeting.
Said, a lot of things, but like, you just told Sting that you're going to put him in a 6-man in 6 minutes, but then you're going to honor him for his retirement. We became his little playthings. We had to wait outside his office. His storylines were very good at debuting, but he could never carry anything through. And it got to the point where I'm carrying on, but it got to the point where I couldn't tell him anything. He couldn't take criticism. He was fucking up, and we were all just having to deal with it. Like, we all had blood, sweat, and tears put into that company. We were all there at the beginning. Like, we all had our careers behind us that helped build that company. And then we all had to just sit side by side and couldn't do anything because he wanted to run it the way he wanted to run it.
So you chose to resign.
Well, that's the end right there. That question. You chose to resign.
You chose to resign. Well, because who else is going to give me however many hundreds of thousands of dollars a year? It's another example of both of these things can be true in some respects. Jake Hager is not a guy that's very smart to the wrestling business, I don't think. And I don't think he's very good. But it's the same point. Even if he is not that quick on the uptake, he's repeating a lot of the sentiments there that a lot of the guys had at the time they were bitching about in the locker room that, that they couldn't tell Tony because he'd get his feelings hurt. All of these things were happening.
This is Chris Jericho's friend saying all of a sudden Tony Khan didn't want to hear everyone's ideas. Who's really saying that?
Well, and can you imagine what some of those ideas were? Says that it's not like there's a big baby face in any of this program.
Apparently, he's not happy that Tony Khan, I'm reading some comments here about other parts of this. We don't have any other audio. He was not happy that Tony Khan didn't take advantage of how over he got with his hat
Oh,
and
Christ.
talking about how he likes his hat. He wanted to do a character who would only say that phrase for no matter what the question was, he would say, I like this hat. And his friends would understand him. You know, maybe Tony wasn't the worst booker in the room. But what do you think? One last thing about all this. What do you think?
I think he ought to shit in the hat and cover it up with another one and see what happens.
You think we're going to see a lot more of this? Whether right or wrong, whether they're disgruntled because they weren't re-signed to a big contract or not? Are we going to see a lot more people talking about the conditions in AEW at least a few years back, if not current?
Yeah, well, look, if you have a bunch of delinquent children in a fucking class and the teacher doesn't have any control over it, then are the kids going to leave the class and talk about how, yeah, we took advantage of her? And no, it's talking about, yeah, she's a lousy teacher. But they're also delinquent children. There's no structure, there's no fucking administration, there's no hierarchy. They're just indie wrestling with multi-millions of dollars.
Well, we will stay on top of the antics of AEW and their former wrestlers and their current wrestlers and the injuries to their wrestlers and so much more